people would tell these tales. I'll tell the Gordon Wright one, but the end result was nobody was telling these people stories. So maybe I should try to put a song together in their honor, because they don't get the respect they ought to get. Whitey McMillan was a nurse, a guy who lived in Saratoga, lived in a house near the race course, rented out parking spaces on his lawn to make his property taxes when it was racing season, just a Saratoga guy. He had been a square dance caller back in the 30s. He'd had a whole routine that was described gleefully to us by various of his friends, of doing the last of the Red Hot Mamas thing. He had a feather boa and all kinds of stuff. I had that feather boa for a long time. It deteriorated beyond all hope. But they would do square dances, and then around midnight, when people had their late supper at the firehouse or wherever the dance was, Grange Hall back in the 30s, he would do this routine. But his grandmother owned boats on the Champlain Canal. He would get on the canal boat with his grandmother, ride down the canal as far as they could go in a day, helping her out. Then he would get on the electric trolley and ride home. This all came up because I was looking at a postcard in Scottsdale at some event, historic postcard, and here's the canal, and here's this big wooden fence alongside it. And I said, what in the world is that for? And the woman who was the town historian at the time, and forgive me, I can't think of her name, said, oh, the reason for that fence was so the headlights on the electric trolleys wouldn't scare the horses on the canal, which is a wonderful story. Gordon Wright was the manager of the Washington County Fairgrounds. And he told the story at one of these events, we must have this on tape somewhere, his family farm was on the canal. And of course, there are stories of canalers helping themselves to corn from the fields or whatever as they went by. And supposedly, some member of the family came out one morning and found the flock of geese gone, except for the gander, who had something tied around his neck and was looking very disoriented. So they caught the gander and they took the thing off, and it was small change and a note. Dear Mr. Wright, we bid you good night. We can't stay any longer. We bought your geese for a penny apiece and left the change with the gander. So, life along the canal. Oh, who was it? One of the, Bill Peake, who talked about one of the last cargoes to go down the canal in the fall were potatoes. And he told a story about a wagon load of potatoes that was to be unloaded onto a canal boat. And it was really cold already, because back in those days it got cold early. And the whole load was all frozen together. So this farmhand that was supposed to be delivering this thought, oh, that's easy, I'll build a fire under the wagon and that'll thaw out the potatoes. So he burned up the whole wagon in cargo. And probably nobody ever let him forget it, because that's the way that worked. Just story after story.
Sure.
And they come and they go, they fly by, and sometimes you remember them 20 years later, and sometimes you never do.
Yeah.
I hope there's enough from Catherine Charron. She said, yes, there was a cabin, and yes, there were bunk beds in the cabin, and families lived on canal boats. Mom would sleep downstairs, and the kids would. She said very often the men would just curl up in a big coil rope and pull a tarp over themselves, and that's where they'd sleep, because they worked 24 hours a day. Sure. She also said, if the hold was clean enough, when you were coming back empty from delivering a cargo, you'd put the kids down on the hold and just pull the ladder up, which also found its way into one of my songs, of course. My little brother's tied to a ring on the deck. He ain't a-going overboard again, by heck. I never had the notion that my mama could swim till she dived off the rudder going after him. It's about a kid playing the Jew's harp. Off mules fussing and the nigh mules mad. How would any mule know good from bad? I paid a greenback dollar just to have a good time, picking Yankee Doodle on this harp of mine. One of the great, Jim Kimball, the great musicologist, has a huge collection of jaw harps, among many, many other things, because a lot of them were made in Troy, New York, by an Englishman who had emigrated over here, and then by, if I recall, his nephews afterward. And the kid in my song got ripped off because he had to pay a whole $1 for a jaw harp back in 1900, let's say. My sister says my teeth fall right out of my head. If she'd have drowned, I might have got the bottom bunk bed, 'cause it drips on my pillow every time that it rains. There's bed bugs sneaking in the cabin again. For the off mule's fussing and the nigh mule's mad. How would any mule know good from bad? Paid a greenback dollar just to have a good time, picking Yankee Doodle on this harp of mine. Just 2 verses. I can lead a mule on, I can tail a mule off, doctor up his harness sores and dose his cough, lead him past a graveyard, I can gentle his mind, and then he goes to fussing about this harp of mine. Old jughead mule, old swayback Sal, you're the sorriest team on the Erie Canal. Why, there's mules that pay money and that stand in line to hear Yankee Doodle on this harp of mine. We wintered down in Brooklyn and I went to school. Any kid who'd live in Brooklyn is a double-dip fool. City makes you puny and your hands get soft till you like to die of schooling or the whoop and cough. So that's all, you know, part and parcel of what life on the canal was actually about. And so then we get into the position of, can we tell these people stories in a way that's accessible and palatable and all that? And those songs were my way.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, thanks.